Let's go through a bunch of my political opinions one by one. They're more balanced than you think they are. And I'm not any kind of label, by the way. Like, I do the thing about guns, and then people are like, well, looks like you're a fucking liberal. Excuse me? That is one small facet of my political equilibrium. There are hundreds of issues. I can't imagine being someone who falls on the same side in every single one. That's almost a statistical impossibility unless you're just conforming your beliefs one at a time to fit the ideological narrative of whatever you already think you should be supporting. Here's a conservative viewpoint of mine. I'm for the death penalty, just in general existence. Hell, I think it should be just fine if a known domestic abuser gets beaten to death by an angry mob. What are we trying to keep him alive for? That whole situation is such hands-tied nonsense. Whenever somebody beats their wife, the entire town knows about it, including the police, but they can't do anything because they haven't caught him in the act, and the wife's always covering for him. I ran into a doorknob. At Mach 5 speed, I fell down the stairs. It's a one-story house. The lies are bad and unconvincing on purpose, because even if she still loves the guy or whatever and defends his honor, her subconscious knows it needs to get out. So then what does everybody do knowing this is going on? Sit there and wait for it to go too far one night and then speak at her inevitable funeral. If it's clear beyond reasonable doubt, even without upholdable proof, which it is literally 100% of the time, get a group of concerned citizens together and love that guy in your own way till his face is gone. How is that not a good riddance scenario? I don't think we need to be overly concerned with how humane our methods of ending people should be. Like, why did we stop hangings? Hanging is such a neat way to go that oftentimes people do it recreationally in their bedroom. Hey, what do you call a corpse with a snap neck and a big dick? Well hung. And me if I never become famous. Abortion is a left-leaning issue for me. Have them. Who cares? We're overpopulated. If you can't even find it in your heart to prevent non-babies from becoming babies, how are you ever supposed to sustain humanity? It's hilarious to me because whenever there's a movie about trimming the population or moving select groups into a utopia when like the planet is dying, you can tell the leaders are always conservative types. Like they'll leave billions of unchosen people to die so they can live, but if a chick is like, I'm not ready for a baby, they're like, you better have that shit anyway, only God decides who lives and who dies. Yeah, okay, people who turn immigrants and refugees away that are trying to escape cartel violence and fucking gas attacks. I'm sure God's the one that denied that court request and sent them back to hell. We need to prevent all the children we possibly can. Miscarriages and barren uteruses aren't holding the numbers down anymore. Modern medical tech and sciences have ensured that 90% of babies get to survive. That's a real number I looked up. It used to be like half. In pioneer times, if you had 2 kids, you got to flip a coin and pick one to give the whooping cough to. That was back when there were actual fields and forests that weren't mowed down to make room for a godforsaken amount of daycare centers and prenatal yoga studios. Ugh. Dude, screw all this mother-fetus bonding garbage. Your baby doesn't need to be introduced to you while it's still in the womb. It's probably kicking so much so you'll shut the fuck up already. It doesn't like Beethoven. Turn it off. No wonder dumb parents write angry letters to Disney about adult themes in their movies. They've been coddling their offspring since they started growing fingernails. You know why everyone in this country of America is such a skeptical piece of shit? And we are, besides whatever we were brainwashed to believe during our upbringing, but all that other outside stuff has to fight tooth and nail to reach our logic pathways. We don't believe anything that wasn't burned into us as kids. Why? Because for some reason there's a tradition of lying to your children from the moment they grow cognitive function about Santa, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, and then whenever they're deemed too old to carry on living in the fantasy world you created for them, you just take all that away in one fell swoop. Hey kids, you know everything we've ever told you? It's all bullshit. Once your world is shattered by the people who were entrusted to teach you about it, why wouldn't you from now on take everything ever said to you ever with the largest silo of salt possible? Why wouldn't you fiercely cling to anything you were raised to believe that at least can't be outright proven to be wrong or awful, and swat any ideas that come along that would rattle that methodically reinforced cage? We're always like, why is it so hard to reach people these days? Because the people from before them already blew it a long-ass time ago. When was the last time you changed someone's mind on even the smallest, most insignificant thing? It doesn't happen anymore. So what, kids just aren't supposed to believe in a fun, magical world anymore? Dude, the world is plenty marvelous and spectacular without bringing fiction into the picture. And fiction is great when it's properly known as the fiction that it is, and not mistaken for reality. I love fiction, everybody does. But we know it ain't real, and that's a good thing. There's already enough in the real world you can excite your kid about, and if you can't think of many examples, you need to do some more research. Immigration. Touched on it briefly before, but you can't turn away innocent families just because you might let in a few rapists. I do like the idea of a Mexican guy that follows due process and jumps through all the hoops necessary to gain legal access to the country just so he can finally live his American dream of raping white girls. That said, if you're here illegally, that's pretty self-explanatory. That said, if you're only here illegally because getting here legally is nigh impossible in the current climate of leaders, lawmakers, and judiciaries who really do not want you here despite it sometimes literally being vital to your survival, get away with it as long as you can and you have my support. You can't not respect a person's fight to make a better life for their family. It's one of the only rights you're truly entitled to in my mind. If your family is facing squalor or doom and you have an opportunity to make a lasting change for the better, I don't care what you have to do to achieve that, you go for it. YOLO, am I right? You get one chance to be here, don't suffer it out in misery. You don't need to hear the guns one again. Poor people are struggling. They need help. Certain wages are unlivable, certain rent unpayable. Divert any remaining resources to help the poor stay on their feet. Right after you finish attending to my every splendiferous need. That's a real word, I looked it up, did a lot of looking up this episode, 2 whole things. Once it has been established that I personally will receive everything I could ever want for, you may then sprinkle the remaining scraps amongst the common folk. That's a conservative point of view, or at least a rich conservative point of view that is for some reason voted for by non-rich conservative points of view. So if you're keeping count, we're at about half and half. I honestly don't think you can be a real person with a sensible thought process if you're not split somewhat down the middle. People are always like, you have to pick a side. Dude, there are hundreds too many issues to pick one side. Politics should always be a game of voluntary Red Rover, where you send yourself to the other side when that side is making more sense on that particular thing. Self-professed liberals and self-professed conservatives make fun of each other for being self-professed liberals and self-professed conservatives, and they're both right, because those are both dumb things to electively be, when shit's way more complicated than picking a banner, going to rallies, and applauding everything your representative says because he's on your side. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.